All right, welcome to the work session of the Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday, August 1st. And our first item of business is a presentation from the Pitkin County Property Tax Relief Program. It looks like we're going to hear from Sam, and Connie's online too, it looks like.
And, yep, and I'm going to go ahead and kick it off, actually, just because there were a couple of changes. So the board had requested a couple of things, and this was really in response to what is almost an unprecedented increase in property values in Pitkin County. And that included meeting with special districts and municipalities. We did conduct that meeting. We had about 31 participants in that meeting, and we talked about the valuation trends. We talked about how the property taxes are calculated, and then we talked about options for mitigating property tax increases. And we talked to the districts about three things that the county is looking at and potentially seeking partnership on. One of those is, of course, the Pitkin County Property Tax Relief Program, which we'll be presenting some options to you on today. And the second was talking about the mechanics of doing temporary mill levy reductions. Some districts did not have a lot of experience with that, so we went through the basics of mill levy credits and how you include those, and how you might assess them. CMC was there to present also with us about how they went through their decision-making process to be out so quickly. They're on a different budget cycle. And then we also talked about Proposition HH and what we know at that point. Our ask at that point was for the districts and municipalities to consider future partnership with us based on what direction we get from you on some of these things. And that includes partnership potentially in funding a property tax relief program like we're going to be talking about today. Looking as appropriate at temporary mill levy credits that are set so that the districts can continue to provide their services while also potentially providing some relief. And then longer term, looking at, as we seek maybe some legislative solutions, continuing to look for support from other local jurisdictions. We basically held at that point, didn't ask for any commitments until you all had a chance to kind of look at some of these options and maybe give some direction on what you want further information about and what you want to direct staff to do before we go out and seek partnership at a further level. But I think all the districts are primed to hear from us going forward. There are two options that we have for you today. One of them, which Sam is going to do take primary lead on presenting, was a proposal that staff had put together and we had worked on. It's fairly well baked, I think, given the information that we have. The second option actually came out of our conversations with the special districts and municipalities. They felt like it may be a good idea for us to look at an option of just doing a refund based on a standard deduction in value, and we'll talk about that. I'll talk about that option a little bit after Sam has a chance to present. But what we'd like to do now is dive into these proposals for the property tax relief program. you do not have to make a decision today. We have some time to put this together, but we would like to get some direction in terms of options that you're interested in pursuing, questions that you have, so that we can put a more detailed proposal together and come back for final approval. And so with that, Sam, do you mind kicking us off a little bit on the work that you've done, and then I'll come on the tail end of that with the second option.
Sounds good, no problem. Sam Lander-Casper, Deputy Director of Strategy and Operations for Human Services. When Human Services was approached a while back about looking at a property tax refund program, we were given an example of a program going on in Broomfield County as kind of a model we could look at and see how we'd like to approach it. Broomfield was really looking at giving rebates to very specific categories of folks, veterans, I forget the other two, and they were looking at basing that off of the area median income. So we already had a low-income tax relief program in Pickens County for seniors that our senior services department runs with the city of Aspen and Pickens County. And we looked at that as a possible model that could also work with how this Broomfield program was in place. Senior Services put this program into place around 1995, so they've been doing it for quite a while. It does serve older adults who are earning less than 400% of the federal poverty level. And we really wanted to kind of look at that and see if that level of income might be realistic for Pickens County as compared to the 60% area median income that Broomfield was using, as well as what might possibly maybe 500% would be more realistic. So basically how we approached this, we decided we wanted to try to figure out how many people might actually access this program based on those different income levels. And, you know, we were looking at data from the senior services program. We looked at households with children because we do have a lot of data on that. And what we really got down to with this population we're looking at, which is primarily focused on serving lower income individuals who are homeowners and residents here, was that we can't very accurately determine how many people might access this program. You know, so from that we decided, well, we're going to need to have a program that is responsive to possibly more demand than we can potentially provide assistance for. So we came up with a model that really allows for a sliding scale based on how far below the income limit for the program a household is, meaning that households whose income is further below the income limit would receive a larger percentage of their property tax increase covered by this program. And then the closer you get to that top end of the program, the smaller your rebate would be. We looked at different eligibility requirements for this program. We wanted to, initially we thought that we would need to set a date where applications would be received and then would be closed, because we can't do rolling eligibility because there will be a finite amount of funds, we assumed, for this program. So we would need to know, in order to run the program, who would be eligible. So applications would be received between a certain date, between two certain dates. The households would have had to have paid residential property tax in 2023 to apply in 2024. Subsidized housing programs wouldn't be applicable since their increases in property tax are already capped. They would need to have verifiable household income, so these folks would be turning in tax returns, things like that. And really then we would just need W-9s to provide payment. And then once we received all of the applications and eligibility was determined, we'd run them through this calculation that we've got outlined here. And I know it gets a little weird with the sliding scale, but Human Services, we are always kind of focused on making sure that folks who are kind of towards the lower end of the income spectrum are maybe getting a little bit more assistance. So essentially, depending on what income limit is decided for the program, whether it's 400%, 500%, the first eligibility test would be, does your gross household income based off your tax return meet that? If you qualify under that, The next thing would be is to take the increase in their property tax from 2023 to 2024 to determine what they could potentially be eligible for. So let's say your property tax is increased $1,000. You could potentially be eligible for $1,000 rebate to offset that increase. Then from there, their amount that they'd be eligible for is based off of the percentage below their poverty level that they are. So it would decrease that amount or increase. It's hard to explain in right here. It really works well in the spreadsheet we put together. But essentially, someone making 60% under the poverty level would be eligible for 60% of their total rebate, as long as those funds are available. And then once the total sum is determined, we would look at a multiplier based on what total funds are available against what total rebates were out there. And so let's say there was $1 million in rebates that people were eligible for, but 500,000 available of funding. We'd multiply all of those potential rebates by 0.5, which would decrease them down to fit the budget for the program.
What determines that amount of money that would be available for rebates?
That is, I think, what this group and the other municipalities are trying to decide.
So, Francie, it would be an appropriation. It would need to be an appropriation out of our general fund, which is already Tabor limited. So we would need to recognize that we are taking some of the hit for our funds that either are not Tabor limited and or other jurisdictions, right, that are not otherwise Tabor limited. And so the appropriation would be at the board's discretion. Staff is recommending an initial seeding of $200,000 from the county, but again, that's at the board's discretion. And then reaching out to our other districts within the county to see if they would be willing to participate in putting money towards a fund for this type of relief program. For both options that we're talking about today, the amount of the refund and such and number of refunds available would be based on what that total pot of money would be. And so we don't know that yet, but I think before we ask for funding, we should have a model that we want to propose. Does that answer your question?
So if we do have participation from other districts that's going into a general pot of money, how are people going to feel that are paying that fee that in their little district that people from throughout the county are benefiting from? So say if I don't live in the fire district's putting in money and I get a benefit from money that it's very complicated.
Yeah, and you know, we've got 51 kind of and so we want to make sure that we create a program that is, I guess, efficient to administer. And so I think trying to track and calculate and change based on those overlapping districts would not be efficient or probably timely. And so, you know, we did put that on the table that, no, this would be a contribution to an overall pot, and we would, you know, note all of those who did contribute to the ability to be able to contribute, because even what percentage each district is of somebody's tax increase is going to change based on the overlapping tax districts. And so trying to keep it simple, that's why we're suggesting we, in theory, from the general fund, are not contributing to this increase at all beyond 5.5% potentially, right? But we would be contributing the $200,000 as a good faith effort to make sure that we're protecting vulnerable populations.
Yeah, and it seems it would be more equitable if each of those 50-something districts just tweaked their mill levy and did a credit for their taxpayers within their district. But we don't know how that's going to pan out either.
So I think it might be a yes and. I think one of the challenges with just doing a temporary mill levy reduction is twofold. One, it's unlikely that it would, in our inflationary environment and such, it's unlikely that it would go low enough to necessarily address the increases for our low income populations. It's also more,
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
it's unlikely that the mill levy would be reduced to such a point that it would protect our most vulnerable populations, because then it's unlikely the districts would be able
Without
to
the
provide
rebate.
services. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And the other thing is it tends to be more, the mill levy reduction tends to be more regressive. In other words, it benefits the wealthier, which is a policy decision. I think from staff's perspective, we're looking for something that's either neutral or progressive in nature. And so I think it will be a yes and, which is to provide some relief for our most vulnerable populations,
And possibly
and
do a mill levy.
probably a temporary mill levy reduction, but probably at a little bit lower level that allows districts to provide the services in what is a much higher cost environment.
Right. The other concern I have is listening to the explanations and reading the packet. I don't want to make it so onerous that people, especially our people in need that are older, are overwhelmed by the process itself. I mean, thinking about all that they're going to have to do to apply for this, it's confusing right now. So hopefully at the end of the day, we'll come up with a process that's a little easier to implement on our side and a little easier for the people applying to apply.
Yeah, and I think the information we're looking for is going to be simple. It's the back end calculation that is complicated. Yeah, except for option 2, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah. So on what grounds are we going to be determining how much funds we should have available? Are we going to have some numbers to back us up, some kind of like, are you going to run some numbers on who might be eligible and what that might look like so that we can have some kind of educated guess about how much to have available?
Like, John, were you gonna- I was going to say, I think the
Just don't
program
point at
John
us.
is going to speak to, that will be easier because I think it can be based on assessor data. When you're looking at what is the population, when you're looking that is in need from the standpoint of being self-sufficient, it's very hard to hit because we have data on folks who are at 100% of federal poverty level up to 133, which is Medicaid eligible. However, the reality is
You have a database of those people.
exactly, but we A, don't know if they're homeowners. B, we can't really say who are these folks between 500% of the federal poverty level and 130 who are kind of in that cliff effect area, and are they homeowners? What percentage? So we've looked at homeownership rates in Colorado. We've looked at
I saw that.
poverty rates, and I think at the end of it, we got down to here's a guess, but we don't know. I think we can safely say that based on what we know, 200,000 could be eaten up very quickly. Up to what it could be, I don't think we have any real way of guessing for this program.
So the number of
yeah.
370 or whatever it was that you came to of potential homeowners who might qualify, is that what that number represented?
That was our best guess, and that could be. I'm happy to admit it could be way off in one direction or another because we can't guesstimate our households because that's households with children. Are they more likely or less likely to be homeowners in Pickens County?
Oh my God, I see.
Yeah.
And
So
thank
actually,
goodness.
no, we really won't have any
Yeah.
data to support our decision about appropriations.
We're playing horseshoes and hand grenades. The data that we have, we're trying to get close with, but it will not be precise in either model. But thank goodness Connie has raised
Connie has
her
her
hand to
hand up.
answer this question for us. So.
I can't answer the question, but it is really a budget question for the general fund. As we get into the budget process, there will be a lot of demands on that general fund balance for 2024. And the board will need to prioritize between a number of different initiatives and programs that are going on. 200,000 was a number that we felt that we could say, yeah, we can do that. Going beyond that, I think it is important that we do have a cap that it not be unlimited. We do need to protect the general fund. And so this will be a prioritization question for the board as we go through the budget process.
Well, if we are capped at a 5.5% increase, that would mean 5.5% increase over last year's tax income. So do you have any idea, Connie, what that is right now about? I mean, I know it's not going to be exact, but.
Oh, let's see, I think general fund property tax was around 6 million, if I'm remembering correctly. So 5.5% on that.
600,000, 300,000.
300,000 or something.
With all
but then
county,
at-
sorry, Connie, I thought you were done there.
300,000 potential increase in tax, property tax income.
Just
For
to
the
the
general
general
fund.
fund.
But
Right.
consider also that we have employee wage increases to consider for the coming year, and health insurance increases, and our own inflationary increases in just providing our general fund services.
Right. But that at least gives us an outside edge, possibly, the 300,000 or more or less.
And one of the things, we're generally, depending on where you're at in the county, we're going to be with all funds, open space, human services, road and bridge, general fund, somewhere probably between 15 and 18% of a total property tax bill. And the general
going to
fund,
be-
and the general fund is going to be less than a third of that.
I'm sorry. We're going to be 15 to 18% of,
An individual property's total property tax bill to the
Okay.
county. It's other districts
Right.
then
That really are the
that are
hit.
making up the balance. The general fund that this is balanced on, of that, 15 to 18% is less than 1/3 of that collection, and so that's why it's a balancing act, and I think we need to seek partnership in order to make a program more beneficial, right, to folks, and protect vulnerable populations better.
So, open space would be getting a bigger increase this year, right? Because of this valuation, their open space income, all the various categories of county departments will be getting an increase.
It depends. So the general fund is Tabor limited. So with the values going up on average 85%, we will be giving a temporary mill levy credit in the general fund, right, to get to our 5.5% limit. The open space and trails fund and the ambulance fund are not Tabor limited. The voters approved those to come out from under Tabor, and their mill levy could stay static, and the increases could accrue into those funds. However, in the Open Space and Trails Fund, for example, there's also a voter-approved limitation on how those dollars can be spent. And a refund program does not fall within those four squares. The board can give a temporary mill levy credit within open space and trails, and that needs to be a conversation, I think, with the Open Space and Trails
During
board.
budget.
They'll probably have some recommendations around that. And that constituency may be a little different, right, than the broader constituency that you serve as a Board of County Commissioners. And you will have to make a decision about what you want to do with the Open Space and Trails mill levy.
And the ambulance
I'm
district, though,
suspecting recommendations not going to be 5.5%, more like 20. That's what I'm thinking is headed our way.
but the ambulance district had language built into the ballot question.
What we already know we will propose as staff is we had projected out revenues, and we had projected a 20% increase in assessed value when we set that mill levy. So we will be coming back to this board with a temporary mill levy credit in the ambulance district, so that we're only collecting the revenues that we need in
Which
order
we
to
said in
run
the ballot
district.
language.
Yeah.
I
What-
have a question about,
Real
did you?
quick, yeah,
go
no, the
ahead.
library. What about the library? You got,
The
yeah.
library,
Thank you,
The
God.
library is mainly covered by Tabor. They do have a very small part of their mill levy that is a fixed mill levy, but it's a very small part.
Okay. That's another opportunity for conversation.
So the percentage of their taxes that, if we adopted this particular program, that we would give them a rebate for, that's not just our share of the taxes, that's their entire tax bill, correct? So if open space, for instance, didn't change the value of their allotted taxes, we would be covering them.
Well, we're probably not covering 100%, depending on how big the pool is, because of the sliding scale, but we're covering a portion of that
Yeah,
increase.
okay. Just checking to make sure.
Yeah.
So it all rests on us, depending on what all the other districts do.
And that, what we're proposing for ease, to make it easier for all of us to do it, is that we administer a program on behalf of the districts that participate in order to provide this kind of relief.
Yeah, okay.
Kelly has her hand up.
Go ahead, Kelly. Thanks.
Hi, greetings from New Jersey. Nice to see you all. I have a clarifying question, I guess, really, and I'll have comments later, but to the ambulance district, when we're sitting as the board of the ambulance district, would we also have the opportunity to make a budget contribution towards this fund? I don't know if that is limited or not, the same way like open space would not be able to make a contribution to this relief fund.
I would want to check with bond counsel, actually, Kelly, to answer that question. Because there's two places that limitation could be. One is in the authorizing statute that allowed us to ask for the mill levy for a specific purpose. And then the other would be in the ballot language. And I don't know the answer to that question right now, but we can look at that.
Good question. Option 2?
So option 2, we have a much less developed model than what Sam had in your memo. But it came up during our conversations with the municipalities and special districts. And we felt that it had some pros and cons to it, but that it was an option that you should be aware of and have the opportunity to explore further if you want to. And this option, simply put, would be basing a refund based on some standard deduction to market value, which would then translate into assessed value. What that tends to do is take either neutral or regressive tax systems and make them more progressive, or at least less regressive, if that's the case, because a standard kind of deduction like you have on your federal taxes tends to benefit at a higher percentage those with lower overall wealth accumulation than those with greater. With that, you could put some boundaries around it. You could say that only residents qualify. That would have a big impact on the number of properties that would qualify. Maybe you're only looking at residential properties and not commercial, which would be staff's recommendation right now, just given the scope. And targeting, helping our more vulnerable residents. You could look at capping the overall value of a home that this type of refund would apply to, or some combination. All of those would be fairly easy to administer. What we know, and we might have better data here to work with, and not better data, just less complex variables, because Sam pulled the best data we had available to try and figure out that first model. But we know from census that we have roughly 13,401 units, right, residential units in Pickens County. We know that roughly 5750 of those, and these numbers can shift, right? Because this is a point in time count with census. But we know that 5750 of those are second home and vacant.
It's an interesting number.
I know it is,
House
right?
size, we're talking house size now?
It was 5749 when I ran the numbers. I
Rolls off
rounded
your
it
tongue
up.
then.
Yeah.
We know that approximately 3,200 units are affordable housing, and probably wouldn't fall into a refund program given the appreciation. That's up to the board. But if you take out, the deed restricted and the second and vacant homes, it leaves you with about 4,450 free market residential properties that are probably occupied by residents. Now, if you start to put some other income or other value types of caps on it, you can start to reduce that number that may qualify. It may not be your target if somebody could afford a $20 million home or $30 million home, that's the target population. You could have that discussion, or you could just say all. The benefit that I think our districts and municipalities were seeing was a fewfold. One, there wasn't that kind of, you almost get a cliff effect, right? What if someone is 501% of federal poverty level or such, who could still be strained but would not necessarily qualify for the program?
The other program.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And there seemed to be also some simplicity in figuring out who would qualify and how you would apply it. It would be the same number for whatever homes do qualify, whether you chose a $200,000 reduction or $500,000 reduction in market value. That would very much depend on what pool we could pull together and how many homes we think would qualify.
That's what this is.
Yeah,
So, not a percent. That's why it's progressive.
correct. Not if you do it as a percent, it
It's
will not be
regressive.
progressive.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep, I get
Yeah.
it. Okay.
So it'd be a flat amount.
So
So-
if we did 750,000, there would be some residences who would be at a negative number. A few.
Well, and I would not suggest maybe going that high. I
No.
don't think we would need to run numbers. I think this program is not fully baked or analyzed. And so it's one that if you're interested in exploring, we could build more of a model around and some alternatives around. We saw some, because all residents, regardless, may have a potential to benefit from this. I doubt that you'd have 100% of folks. It would be a refund program as conceived by staff anyway, so it would be you're paying your taxes still, but then you can apply for a refund of those taxes. And so we probably wouldn't get 100% of qualified properties coming in. And that would be the variable that's going to be hardest to guess. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions on that. Is it okay if I go ahead? I'm a little concerned about exempting the commercial, because if you have a business that's trying to stay in business and they own their property, it could be pretty harmful to them. And it's 27% or something like that, right, for commercial?
Right.
So that is a huge chunk of taxes if we don't ameliorate them for the businesses. There are a lot of businesses that are on the edge. And so that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Can I just tag
I
on?
forget the other one, so let's go to
I'm gonna
somebody
tag
else. I'll
on to
come
that
back.
Commercial, and I understand that, but for me, the problem is so many of those commercial landlords are just rolling it over into their rents. And I don't want to ameliorate for the property owner of commercial property who is also making whoever's renting their space pay more.
But it might prevent them from asking.
That's what I'm saying is, there has to be a connection there. I don't want it to be a double win for that commercial. I'm gonna get money back from the county and I'm gonna charge you more.
And one of the things I think the board will have to really consider is who are you really trying to help? Because the more the more properties you include, right, the lower that number is
Exactly.
going to be. Yeah, you know. Where
But
I'm
I
going.
was actually not thinking about property owners who rent out their space. I was thinking about businesses that are on site, that own their site.
That's different. And
Yeah, that's what I was imagining, but you're right, there's the landlord
And I
picture.
also think we need to be looking at primary residences. You live here and you
Yeah,
live in
right,
a
I
house,
agree with that too.
rather than it's your second, third, or 12th home. And I would also like to look at, I don't know how that would fit in the reduction of value of, the 500,000, but there's so many variables to work into a final solution.
Kelly and then Greg?
Thanks.
Thanks. I'd like to understand the second program recommendation a little bit better. Is the standard refund, I guess, proposal in lieu of a mill levy reduction for funds? Or is it kind of instead of the first program? Because I could see kind of the standard reduction being more broadly applicable, and then perhaps in lieu of a mill reduction, or we'd have to maybe take that into account when discussing any mill levy reduction.
Yeah, I think when we conceived of it, Kelly, it was in lieu of the first option for providing the property tax relief, that the mill levy discussion would be a separate conversation. It's going to happen with each district. We think that by having a program like this available, I expect districts are going to hear a lot, from property owners, and a lot of concerns just based on what we're already hearing, right, along these lines. And so having this type of relief program that would hopefully protect those who are most vulnerable to the increases would put less pressure on reducing mill levies down to address the needs and sacrificing services.
Then just another question as I think through that standard refund program. Is it appropriate to think, when you were talking about kind of the cliff effect for, the person at 501 of poverty level, is it possible though that program might reduce the amount that somebody at the lowest poverty level could receive from the first program? You're essentially those at the lowest level might get less while broadening the programs to serve more.
I think that might be true because I suspect more properties will qualify right under that kind of standard deduction model. So if we've got a limited pot that we're dividing amongst those properties, that you're exactly right, Kelly, that would be the case. Now, the way you might manage that in that standard deduction model is starting to reduce the top level value that may qualify for it to, reduce the number of homes. But I think you're thinking about it correctly that, based on our numbers, right now we said 300, can you remind me, Sam, that how many homes or households we thought?
Well, so there was an estimate of around, I think, 370, but that's households with children. And then I think for the seniors, we were getting, actually, I think they've only been getting between 30 and 50 approved applications a year.
Right. And the numbers I gave you, so you're thinking about this, right, Kelly, where, gosh, we may have, 4,400 plus free market residential, and that's not even counting the commercial if you went that, 4,400 properties that may qualify if you didn't put a top end on it.
Or do residents occupied residency?
Right. Resident occupied free
Yeah.
market. Yeah.
It's 4,450.
Kelly, did you have more?
Oh, so that's the number of resident occupied free market, or does that?
Based on census data, yeah, that's free market residential properties that we believe are occupied actually by residents, not second homes, vacant.
What's the number again,
STRs.
4,000 something?
4,450. It's going to float a little bit because that was a point in time. in that change.
Greg, did you have a question?
No, I had some comments. I guess that will lead to questions. I guess my concerns with this are that we don't want to. I think we're worried about erring on the side of benefiting people who have money and more money or a larger home value or a greater income, while making the assumption that their lives are easier, so they shouldn't have to get a discount. And I know that's an accurate, it does make a certain amount of sense, but we do not know everybody's situation. And while we're doing this, I'm worried we're going to err on the side of benefiting, the people at the bottom end the most, and ignoring the people who in a higher income level who might be just as in financial dire straits, but because they have a higher property value or they have a higher income, we don't perceive it, we don't measure it. So it's hard to describe it, but I think what I am striving for is a situation where everyone benefits. Everybody who's paying the increased taxes based on increased valuation sees some benefit from this program, regardless of, who they are. This is where I would start, or where they sit in the economic spectrum. Then we could start looking at things like RO. I love the idea. If you're a resident and this is your home, perhaps we limit it to ROs. Perhaps we look at the bell curve of property values and income values and take a slice and say, maybe all homes that are within a certain range of the average home price, something like that. But I think that I'm concerned about this not being particularly fair if we're going to start picking and choosing who gets the discount. My particular neighborhood, as you know, had probably the highest valuation in the entire county, and there certainly aren't the wealthiest
You
people.
mean highest valuation increase?
Increase in valuation. I think we were about 300%. Other neighborhoods are down at 15 or 20%. The average is 85, right? But people in my neighborhood are going to be saying, wow, my valuation went up 300%, yet I don't qualify for any of this. Mm-hmm. And I have a real problem with it. So I'm not ready to make a decision on it. What I'd like to do is see, can we have a financial advisory board, right? I don't know if they're
They have not weighed in.
Well, I'd like them to weigh in if we could have them weigh in, but I kind of think we should reach out a little bit farther and see how people feel about this. The commercial question is an interesting question. It opens a can of worms, but Francie makes some good points there. What we're doing is seeing an increase of taxes, a dramatic increase of taxes potentially for everyone who is a property owner in the county. Yet we're trying to figure out how to, who to be generous to with a discount.
John, before you go, Francie, may I just?
Well, I'm
Steve,
not
I know,
really done
but I
yet,
just,
but-
yeah, can I just tag on to what you just said real quick? We also have to be careful, how are we gonna fund it? That's the bigger question.
Well, that's what I was.
Well, we don't
gonna
know
say.
what it is,
That's
and we
my
don't know how
Yeah,
much.
but
We don't-
we're already capped in our general fund at
right.
5.5%.
We've already discussed that.
Yeah,
so
so
we
we,
kinda know.
Well, not really,
we are
because
not gathering in all that money to dole it back out again. We're already
Right.
limited, so it's our partners out there who will be benefiting.
Okay, well, that's where I was going with this.
Yeah.
You can finish it for me if you
No,
want.
thank you. No, I just wanted to see where you were going on that.
Go on,
So,
Craig.
no, I want to hear your ideas on that.
Okay,
funding.
thank you. I think we should reach out and encourage the districts. We're in a tough spot. I love open space and trails and everything they've done for us. Certainly I rely, or hopefully will someday rely on the ambulance district. Hopefully not. But going down the list, everybody's district is doing important work. If they're going to be receiving what might be a windfall, even with the inflationary times we're looking at, it's going to be hard for them to come back and justify an ask for more money in the future if they're not being generous in their credits now. So I think this is a slippery slope for the deciders at the taxing districts who are saying, hey, we're getting a windfall. Should we keep it, or should we join the county and the other munis and whoever else in kicking some of it back? because these are the same people you're going to have to go back to ask for money again for. And I'm sitting over here just wondering what my neighbor's going to say to me when they say, hey, wait a minute, none of us qualify for any of these credits, but we're going to be
First
getting
scenario.
soaked
In the
for
first
this.
scenario.
In the
Right,
second,
and that's
everyone does.
and so the second scenario appeals to me the most. I want to explore that more, and yes, it raises a lot of questions. And I guess my final thing I was going to say is it's amazing how easy it seems to tax everybody. Yet when it's time to give some back, how hard this is. And I think we should figure out how to streamline it.
I don't see how we can afford the second scenario, because I just ran some numbers. So if we use the 845 and all 4,000 people applied for that, assuming that that's like $3,300,000. And if we did the 1,691, it's like $6 million. That's our whole income from taxes. So I don't see how we can afford this second one unless we tweak something at 50 mils. I mean, is that what we charge, 50 mils?
Well, it depends where you are in the county.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. So
Or depending on the
because there are
districts
the
that you have.
51 different overlapping districts, and so, but that's a reasonable range to assume. I think that was either in the old Snowmass or Snowmass Village area was where that one was pulled from. Yeah, and so Francie, what would happen there? That's why I said you'd probably have to look at other factors when we brought the dollars back, like reducing the amount that you're reducing values by, or the point that I think is troubling Greg right now, which is where is there a level of home value or wealth at which you would say, gosh, maybe if it's 10 million and up or whatever it is, right, that we would exclude those. You start to pare that number down, and then what is a reasonable assumption on how many would actually apply for it? Is it 100%, 80%? And we could model all that for you and some options, but I think that was the point Kelly was making, is you do thin the soup a little bit when you do that.
Right. So just to be clear, and also for the public, so you would take the evaluation, the newest evaluation of your property, multiply it by 0.0677. That would give you your assessment rate. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And then for every 1,000 that you have left within there, you multiply that by 50 or whatever the mill is. So the people who are, if we gave everybody, 750,000 seems punitive to the county.
It's high. We're just giving
But so
ranges.
even if you let's say we use the 200,000 number. So that to me seems like a number like that is going to affect more significantly the people who need help than a higher number. My taxes are going to go up quite a bit. I just ran the numbers on that. It's going to be quite a bit. But on the other hand, it's not going to break the bank for me and other people at sort of the mid-range. But for people who are not at the mid-range, $676 or $845 can be significant, So I think if we're going to look at the second one, we definitely need to be careful about what amount we choose, but I would like to look at more details from it, and then I'll call on Steve. I'm almost done, Steve. Before we're asked to make a decision, I'd love to know more about option 2.
Likewise, thank you.
Yeah, Steve.
So I am going kind of along the same line of thinking as Greg, and I sort of see a possibility of a hybrid where we do, for the lower income people, that we actually give them a rebate like is proposed in our first option. The rest of the people, if we are limited to increasing our budget to the Tabor limit of 5.5%, or is it 5.7? I'm not sure.
5.5.
Can we, it seems like it would be fair to limit the tax increase for everybody to that same rate, the 5.5%. Otherwise, if we collect way more taxes and we're limited on our budget, don't we just have to refund that Tabor money, extra Tabor money back to everybody?
Do you want me to? So, Steve, I think the issue is that the majority of the tax burden, so 85% of somebody's tax bill is not going to be coming from the county, right? It's going to be coming from other districts who may be debruced and may not have those same Tabor limitations, so there will not be a refund issue driven by this. That's why we wanted to seek partnership to fund anything that the board wants to do.
Yeah, but I'm thinking if we as the county do our 20% fairly and properly for everybody along the line of what Greg is saying, and use that to set an example. Now, maybe some of the other districts are gonna take the full amount and people will end up paying more, but we as the county would have done our part to limit what we are collecting from people, because we're limited by Tabor and how much we can increase our budget. To me is a fair thing. So I suggest a combination of the second option for everybody at a certain percentage increase limited to the Tabor for what the county's 20% is. Try to get the other partners to come in on that, but we might or might not be successful there. And then the lower income people who are going to be hurt by any sort of increase, people on basically a fixed income, then we give them, set aside 200,000 and do the first program for them. And I'd like to explore doing that combination. Thank you.
I have some responses to that, but after Connie and then Kelly.
I would just encourage the board to consider the efficiency of the program. The broader the qualification, the more people who may be eligible, that could water down the amount of the refund. And on an efficiency side, if staff is having to cut 4,000 checks for $100 each, is it really providing the relief? And the amount of work involved in processing that many checks is a lot higher. So just something to consider as the board is looking at different options.
It's also a lot of money.
It's easier to take the checks than it is to cut them, right?
Kelly, thank you, Connie.
Definitely to cash them.
Thank you. Yeah, I just would love for us to be very clear on, I think the conversation that we're having, because I don't think that we are in an either or situation. I really believe that we are in a position to talk about a mill levy reduction for broad relief in one conversation, and talk about targeted relief for those who may shoulder the larger burden in what is in an extraordinary increase environment. And I think that is the conversation that we're having today. And, you know, I would like us to err on the side of providing relief to those who are least capable of shouldering the burden from this extraordinary property tax valuation environment. Because those are the folks that can't. And then we, on a separate day, have a conversation related to the funds that we control about how we want to provide broad-based relief. I mean, in many ways, we've signaled how we're thinking about it. One is we have to provide relief in our general fund because we're limited by Tabor. You know, I think we absolutely have to justify our budgets for the ambulance district and open space for any increases that we may choose to keep and mill levy reductions we may choose to give. I just don't think that that's necessarily today's conversation. You know, my inclination is that option 2 falls into more broad-based relief. than, you know, the targeted relief for folks who really need it. And, you know, I'd like to see us commit to sort of that goal, of acknowledging that there really are some households out there, even if we can't get an exact arm around it about how many of those are, that won't be able to shoulder this burden while others will be able to. So I don't know. I'm happy to pursue more information about option number 2, but I'm thinking about that as like a broad-based relief, and I don't want it to come forward at the exclusion of the targeted relief for, you know, folks on fixed incomes, et cetera, that really are going to have a hard time writing that property tax check next year.
Sounds reasonable.
Francie?
Okay.
Yeah, real quick, the property values will be in effect for 2 years, so we need to be looking at funding a program for 2 years, right? Because the property values reevaluation won't be again for the next 2 years, which we may or may not be anticipating reductions.
I do not think we're anticipating reductions that would make up for the increase, or we haven't seen reductions like that maybe ever. And so I think this is, you know, staff's recommendation is that this provide some gap funding for folks to be able to you know, weather this initial shock, and then we can look at longer term, but we did not conceive this as longer term.
So we're just looking at a 1-year program at this time.
That's
no, I
what,
just wanted to
that's what we
clarify.
were looking at the staff level, but I think I mean, Pat, you make a good point that the impacts are going to be there, and certainly a program that maybe is more focused and within smaller means is more sustainable over a long period of time, if that's a goal of the board's.
I wanted to comment on the second one again, just briefly, and then I think we all feel like we need more information before we make a decision, but I am concerned about reducing the impact to very high-end houses, because they put a big demand on the county. And so, yes, their evaluations have gone up, but so have the costs to the county in supporting those large estates. So I'd like to look at having a cap on that somewhere if we decide to go with the second one. I really don't think we need to be saving multi-millionaires or billionaires a couple of $1,000s each. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, just a last comment about
I
that.
tend to agree.
Kelly, did you have more? Go ahead. Oh, no, you're done? So it's my understanding that
Well, donuts.
we're all in agreement that we need some more information on the second scenario before we're ready to make a decision. Greg?
I just wanted to ask, Connie, you probably have the data, or somebody does, on home prices, and is there a bell curve? I'm assuming it's a bell curve of lowest to highest prices and quantity of homes in those categories. And if we can look at that curve and decide where do we have, you know, boundaries on the high end. There probably wouldn't be boundaries on the low end, but there'd be boundaries on the high end of anything under a certain range. Is it average home price? Is it average home price plus X?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Connie. Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
No,
I
you
didn't
can.
think you were going to want to answer that one, but yeah, Greg, I think we can look at average and median. You know, you can. We'll have a high standard deviation, right, in this community,
Yeah.
just because of the wealth disparities that exist here. But I think we could look at what's happened to median home prices, of course, and we can explore maybe some caps based on, you know, standard deviation from that, or something. We'll look at
It'd be interesting to look at that. Also, number of years as an RO, it occurred to me. I wanted to throw in, how many years have they been here? We just have a 2-year tax records mentioned here, but perhaps it should be longer than that. Are we trying to benefit locals, or are we trying to benefit somebody who maybe owning the property and speculating, and it's been on the market for 18 months.
Right, and the models are different, right? The model that Sam talked about was really about residents who are income stressed, right? That are income stressed, that we're trying to provide some relief from increasing tax bills for. The second model, and I think Kelly characterized it correctly, it's a little bit more, it's broad-based, right? It's not necessarily targeted in terms of who might be most vulnerable, but it is progressive. You know it's going to be progressive in its impact, but the impact may get watered down since we're going to have a limited pot one way or another. And so we can certainly bring back some alternatives around this second option to look at. I think Connie's point is really, really important, that staff would just like some permission to bring in this element of what makes sense from an efficiency perspective. You know, you don't want to spend $50 to write a $100 check, you know, for and nobody's happy. Right. So we want to make sure that it's focused and meaningful, and the board can kind of make a decision on models then. But what I am hearing is a general desire to provide relief. I think the public needs to hear that this board generally is supportive of providing some relief and making sure that those vulnerable, I am hearing interest, not necessarily agreement yet on tactic, but interest in ensuring that the vulnerable populations are covered by whatever program that we have. So those who are really concerned, there is some interest in providing a program and help going forward. And what we're really talking about is the House and who is ultimately going to be eligible for it.
John, I was just wondering, and this probably complicates things, but I think what I heard from the board is there's kind of a crux between folks who might have higher income, but their costs are going up. So I almost wonder if it wouldn't hurt to look at it from the standpoint of income to home costs. Right, looking at people who have, so looking at folks regardless of your value, what is your income versus your expense? You know, so like Greg mentioned, folks in his neighborhood who might see a 300% increase, maybe they might have higher income, but is that, you know, percentage-wise, is that impact similar to folks who have lower income, lower increase? I know that complicates things, but you know,
what kind of costs are you thinking about? Like mortgage costs or
just mortgage costs versus your household income, right? So, and property tax. So mortgage, property tax, what is that total versus, and what percentage of your realized income is that? So let's say someone has a $5 million home, somehow their costs are 35% there, right? That could be similar to someone who has a $600,000 home whose income is lower, right? So I don't know if that's a way we'd want to look at it. It would require more verification from the customers who are applying. It would require more work on the part of the county, but it might be a hybrid model that kind of falls in between these two that have kind of been discussed.
It's an interesting suggestion.
It is interesting. I'm a little concerned about it because their mortgages aren't going to go up just because their evaluation goes up, for one thing. And there are people who have higher mortgages because they've taken more money and invested it somewhere else, where maybe they're making more money than the rate on their mortgage. So are we rewarding them for making that decision? You know, very complicated. Housing costs are very complicated for the wealthy and even the middle range people. So there's a lot of decisions that impact the size of their mortgage.
I think we have direction. We can look at that, and based on kind of our complexity and ability to administer it, make a recommendation to the board.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Sam. I'd recommend reaching out to. We have a financial advisory board who doesn't quite cover topics like this, but they might have an interest. They may have some perspective. there may be others. I'm just thinking this is a broader conversation, and I'd like to see other wise people weigh in on it.
Well, and I do want to point out that we had the second option because we did meet with all the taxing districts and
You've met
folks that
the
deal.
districts. That's where that came from,
And so
right.
that's where that conversation
So
came
that's already
from.
happening,
And
yeah.
as Ann comes back, we can certainly talk to the financial advisory board. I think any good financial advisor would say if you're only bringing in 5.5%, maybe you
Don't give it away. Don't
Participate.
give away more than that. Don't give
Exactly.
away more than you're taking in.
yeah.
That's
That's
why
good
I like
advice.
the $200,000 to $300,000 cap. But I do have a question about commercial in terms of the plan number one. That's purely residential, right?
Everything
So-
right now is residential.
So
and
no
they're-
hope for property, for business owners who own their property.
Unless they would fall into that income, it's really an income threshold. It's really, that first option, if you think about it, is actually focused on the individual who owns property, right? Because it's based on their income, and that's what property tax relief is based on then.
So if they had a low income, but they owned their commercial property,
They're not, the commercial property, no, it's just the residential
Okay.
property. Right now, that was part of our proposal, but this is a board, I mean, you all get to direct us.
yeah, okay.
So.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Sam. Thanks a lot, Connie
Thanks, Sam and Connie.
and Lindsay. Okay. Oh, yeah, it's me.
Moving along.
Yes, moving along.
Carson.
We have Carson. Welcome, Carson. This is Carson Schmitz, who's on the APTA board. I've been serving with him for 2 years, and Kelly's been serving with him for longer than that. And this is a mere
And I'm gonna
formality.
jump off with high endorsements for Carson and go back to family vacation time. But good to see you all.
Bye,
Bye,
Kelly. Have
Kelly.
fun.
Kelly. All right, so are we through? You guys made Kelly's endorsement?
That's all she-
Yeah,
all you
as far
need
as
is
I'm
right.
concerned. yeah.
Anybody who knows you, so it's not
Thank
going to
you.
take long, Carson. But I think maybe Charlotte might like to introduce you.
Well, thank you, Carson, for showing up. This is a renewal interview. He's currently on the APTA board. And we did advertise this position in the Aspen Daily News and on the website. And we received well, take that back. Yesterday we received an application, but it was way after the deadline. So I will let you ask your questions.
Well, why don't you speak to us first, Carson, and tell us why you would like to remain on the APTA board?
So why I want to remain on the APTA board? I mean, so this would be, I guess, I've been serving for 5 years. I'm on the second iteration of the APTA board, and for me, I mean, I really feel like I have a duty to kind of give back. I live in APSHA housing. I got involved, 5 years ago because I went into the APSHA office and took a bunch of papers with me and found somebody who was cheating, and it was okay. And they said, well, we can't do anything about it today, but would you like to be on the board? And so
Punishment.
so that's how I
Serves
got.
you right.
That's how I got on the board. And I will say I'm very proud that that particular instance, the board has changed that. It was in regards to trust. So just made a lot of progress. And I will say, I mean, I think that that the board, that we've made a lot of progress. I mean, when we go back and look at everything that's happened in the last 4 years, have made a lot of progress. I think the current board is really taken on some really big projects. I mean, in particular, capital reserves is a really, really big one that people have been trying to solve for 15 or 20 years at least, right? So I think that I think we have a very strong board that is willing to take on very difficult and complex tasks, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, normally when I'm with Carson, he's sitting here.
So,
Yeah, well, I'm delighted that you want to serve again, Carson. I think you've done a great job. I think you're a good chair. And I really appreciate your financial expertise on the board. Makes a big difference.
Thank you.
So you certainly have my support.
Great.
Patty?
I want to thank you.
Thanks.
This board, your board, that board, is tackling big issues and spending a lot of time, and we appreciate that, your efforts. And and what you've been doing. So if you really want us to reappoint you, I'm there. If you would really rather us deny your reappointment, it's really up to you. But we're not going to let you deny. So, by
That
the
would be your
way,
escape.
Would you prefer to be on the tax relief board?
yeah.
I'm good.
I would just love to, you've been on there long enough. You've been in the trenches now. You've been observing how everything's going. I appreciate everything you've written here regarding taking care of the business. The compliance cases, which are I think really important to a lot of people. How to move forward. But I'd love to hear just your philosophy on where you think APSHA is going and needs to go, and how do you see APSHA working with the Western Regional Housing Alliance, or if that's what they're called?
Yeah,
I'd hate to see redundancies, but
Right.
but there may be opportunities to work together. It'd be fun to see what's possible there.
Yeah, I think, being in the trenches and kind of, trying to tackle a lot of the small details. I think for me, I appreciate the support of this board with what we're trying to do with the emergency repair program, with the HOA survey program. For us, I think that's huge. I think there is certainly a place for looking at coordination across the region, but I sort of feel almost like for me and the APSHA board, I feel like that coordination is almost something that maybe this board could look at. We can look at that if we're directed to, but I think that right now we have so many other issues that we need to deal with as an APSHA board. I think we're right now, focused on transparency, really trying to build that public trust. I think unnecessarily in the past there have been, just less sharing of information with the public than perhaps could have been shared. I think when people don't know what's going on, they just immediately assume that there's something nefarious going on, and that's not the case. And so, I think our goal on the APSHA board, certainly we can, like I said, there is a place for coordination, but we have so many other things that we need to sort of take care of our own house before we start to look at expanding.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. The other part to complicate it further would be how could we've talked. I talk a lot about partnerships. We don't have all the money, and it's possible that we shouldn't have to spend it all anyway. We should really be working with partners who have an interest in building housing. Have you thought much about that? And do you see issues that may not have occurred to me or others regarding, say we have partners joining in, which would mean the partners might have an interest in who gets the housing as opposed to the broader community housing that we've espoused?
From my standpoint, and I've said it multiple times, I think that the most impactful thing from new housing standpoint is, if there's ways to build into the land use code to where you can take a property and make it the highest and best use, or there is some economic reward, right, or money to be made for a developer. For me, I think that's a win for everybody, right? Because you don't have to develop it, and you may have. So if you get a developer and a developer builds new affordable housing, and then they get to choose who lives there. I guess my kind of thought on that is, I think there's a place for maybe some limited choices like that. I don't know whether it makes sense for them to choose all. I don't know if that was the question that you're kind of asking.
Well, those are the details that need to be worked out. But
Yeah.
I could imagine there being partnerships, whether it's us working with the city or the county, or not the county, but the fire district or the school or the hospital or RAFTA or you name it, ski company, maybe private entities who have the wherewithal, something to bring to the table. I can imagine doing that only because the need is so great. We can't individually shoulder it ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's where that was going, and it'd just be interesting to see. Then if I could take a little more of your time, the other question is, we've had a lot of criticism, always. We all do about everything all the time. We're getting used to it. Regarding the housing program, one thing I hear is that, boy, we've been doing this for 40 or 50 years and we don't seem to have figured it out yet. And I think that's not fair to APSHA, because I know APSHA has evolved and developed and become more responsive and more sophisticated and bigger over this time. Yet it still feels like we may be leaving out key parts of the workforce. Or, are we really solving a problem, or are we just growing it bigger? Those questions come up. I see it in the paper. How do you respond to that regarding, how well is APSHA doing? How well, not just APSHA, how well is our community doing in taking care of the workforce?
I mean, I think the community, we have the largest per capita housing authority in the country. I think we're doing a good job. I think where we have a lot of room for optimization is creating movement within the system. We've tried to do some of that with the right sizing program to try and provide some of that movement. And I think ultimately that is our big challenge, right? Is because we have the house, and then it's like when I look at my own neighbors. I mean, there's a lot of single people in 3 bedrooms, and then there's a lot of 5 and 6 household families in 1 and 2 bedrooms, right? So I think one of the ways we could take care of the community better would be to try and, if there's a way to just incentivize movement, within the system. I mean, with the critics, I think there are, everybody's got an opinion on it, and there's no perfect solution, and right. So we can't build housing forever. We've got to stop at some point. So honestly, my focus being on the APSHA board is less about the new development piece, because that's not really what we do. It's more about trying to, increase transparency with what's going on in APSHA to kind of build that trust from the public, so that they see what we're doing. We've done that through the complaints process, where we put the complaints online, where if you make a anonymous complaint, you'll get a case number. You can go back in later and see what the status is, right? So increasing transparency, trying to maximize or optimize the occupancy across all the units, and then ensure compliance. I mean, to me, those are kind of the 3 things that I kind of hit on, and then within that, capital reserves touches so many different pieces of all the housing. So I think APSHA is doing a good job, and it's not perfect, but we're certainly working, and we're making a lot of progress.
Yeah, it's not for want of effort.
Yeah, right.
Could I ask one more question? I promise short answer is fine. The idea, I lived in affordable housing and benefited from it greatly, and certainly appreciate it. But what we're seeing now, the way things have changed and the rest of the market has appreciated, is that once you get in, it's like the best thing that ever happened is when you win the lottery, right? But then once you're in and you decide you want to move on, you realize the rest of the market has appreciated so much, you're kind of trapped there. It's a golden cage in some respects. And have you thought much about solutions, ways out? Are there people that are actually trapped in their housing here who would probably rather be somewhere else, but they can't now?
Somewhere else? You mean within the county, or do you mean?
Well, within the county probably is a no, right? Because it's so expensive. But if people wanted to, say, live in the valley, it's possible you'd have to go to Cisco, Utah to find something after you sold your affordable unit. Thompson Springs, maybe, Cisco. We're that far out. I'm joking, but it seems like it's getting farther and farther out all the time. So if you're going to sell your unit in Aspen, where could you actually afford to land? That's the question that's the tougher question. And I don't know if people think about that when you get into it, but you're kind of trapped there.
Yeah, I mean, I think people do. I mean, I don't know how. I think that is a problem that you could look at solving, but I think
I don't think we can solve.
I think before you even look at solving that, I think you got to figure out capital reserves. I mean, there's so many other
Right.
things that I would sort of put that in a nice to have category. I don't know if that's
Place to
something-
retire to, like a.
Yeah, I mean,
Or something simple like
Big
increasing
Thompson
the
Springs.
percentage of appreciation from 3% to, I mean, there's variables out there.
I think the public is concerned more, not so much people who are trapped in APCHA, but people who take advantage of APCHA. And
yeah, I mean, and then I mean, so then the the flip side to that is, so you increase the you increase the value. If you talk about increasing the value, I mean, you still have properties that need to be maintained and taken care of, and
Right.
I mean, that's like all of it kind of comes back to capital reserves. I mean, one of the things that I am aware of, is just looking at the future of, right, we have an aging population of owners in properties that may have, we're going to find out, we so strongly suspect, underfunded HOAs. And we could end up with a scenario where you've got retirees on fixed incomes with HOAs that have to do special assessments, and then you're doing the very thing that you said of, okay, so now you
do you
can't
do?
pay your special assessment, you got to leave, where are you going to go? Which is why I think it's, capital reserves is so important that we start looking at it now, because it really is. I mean, it's a big problem coming down the road.
yeah, it's
We're
past
about
due.
2 decades behind on that one.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Again, but that's not
Yeah.
for lack of trying. I mean, you
Right.
go back and look at the 2010 Housing Frontiers. You go back and read, through those, the conclusions and the documents. It's the same problems we have today.
Really?
Right. And
Just with more zeros.
very little has changed. It's just bigger numbers.
So I agree with you on the enforcement taking up too much time of the board. And it would be great if we could figure out whether we had an enforcement committee or more hearing officer effectiveness, or I don't know what, but I agree with you. I mean, this summer has been all about
Right.
basically one.
Right. Well,
And-
we've had
Yeah.
right, tomorrow we've got, I think there's 3
Really.
executive sessions specifically related to compliance, and we've removed a lot of the compliance, from. We've removed a lot of it from our agendas, which has been good, but yeah, this summer it has taken up a lot of time.
Yeah.
Thanks for your
Well,
service on
are
this.
we all in agreement that Carson should
Yeah, I
remain?
think so.
And we are so
We're not
appreciative.
deciding that today, are we?
Well,
We
we
need
need for you guys to decide so that I can take to the city.
Oh, got it,
that
okay.
you
So,
approve.
thumbs
They
up.
will
Yeah,
interview
thumbs up,
Carson
definitely.
next week.
Kelly was a thumbs up. And I won't be there tomorrow. I have a really big reunion for people I worked with for a long time that I really don't want to miss.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So
I'm definitely supportive. Thank
Kelly
you.
is going to be there. She'll be remote, but she'll be there.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, thank you all for your support.
We'll find something else for
your
you to
work
do in
on
your
this,
free
yeah.
time, we promise.
Okay. Well, we just my wife and I just had our 4th kid, so I've got plenty of
Fourth?
things to take up.
Hope
my-
you're not living in a 2-bedroom
Not to
unit.
mention a full-time job.
3. We're in a 3-bedroom. We won it on our 31st bid, and we're happy as can be.
Wow, fantastic.
Where is it?
Snowmass.
So you're evidence that the system works.
It does. I mean, we were within 6 months. We were within 6 months of having to leave after being here 15 years.
Wow.
Wow.
My son just won the Garfield County.
Yeah.
Well,
this
I have
spring.
4 children also, and there aren't very many of us who have 4 kids.
Well, I mean, like I said,
It's a special club.
I'm grateful for it, and sincerely, I feel like I owe the community, my time to give back because
My father-in-law
wonderful.
had 6 children, and he volunteered for every board he could get on because he wasn't at home very often with 6 kids living out in mobile home.
There is one part of the board I would like to see change a little bit. I am the only person who doesn't live in affordable housing on the board now that Skippy's not on it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it would be good to have another voice on the board of somebody who doesn't live in affordable housing, sort of the rest of the county,
it's up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only, Greg and I are the only ones. Well, no,
Carson.
Steve. Steve. I'm sure Steve has plenty of boards he's on.
Yeah.
So,
Good. Well, thank you.
Thanks
Thank
very
you so much,
Appreciate your
Carson.
time.
Really appreciate your service.
Thanks, Carson.
Thanks, Charlotte.
All right,
And now we're going to prep for the Snowmass Village joint meeting, and we are way behind schedule, Greg.
I know, so I'll
And,
shut up. I have nothing to say
I'll-
about this.
I'll try and be quick. So I did have a chance just to revisit at a staff level about the meeting. And we don't meet regularly with Snowmass. It's kind of gotten off track, especially during COVID. But they have new board members. We have new board members actually since last time I think we met with them.
I've never met with them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so what staff was thinking is a dinner meeting in Snowmass Village, still working on a location. It would provide some time just to break bread and get to know each other a little bit. They have an interest in having an update on just a couple of things. We've been talking at a high level about a potential satellite library facility in partnership with the village at the rec center. Just talking at a high level about that and their interest in it and what we're looking at. We do have some at the staff level now, some options that we think are feasible within the library's fund, and that's a good partnership opportunity conversation. They'd also be interested in an update on just the airport and the process. They have a high interest in that. And then really, I think there's an interest in maybe getting on a more regular schedule, maybe a more frequent schedule of getting together. So just more of an open discussion about shared topics of interest and what a more regular meeting schedule might look like between the two bodies.
Sounds
It all
good to me.
sounds good. Sounds fine.
It's
Just
always
to
great.
show you how seldom we see Snowmass. I've seen Bill at many meetings because he's on the rafter board, and he was. I don't know if he still is. Is
I
he
don't
still?
think he is anymore.
And I've only seen him in person until one conference up here once. And so when I saw him at that recent conference, I didn't recognize him because he looked so different than he did on Zoom. So, yeah, so different.
Better?
It's
Don't
a
answer
good
that.
Way better.
It's a good board to work with, and our meetings, our dinner meetings in the past have really, but not just the shared information, but the shared time has been great.
Are they making dinner and we just bring wine? How's this work?
I don't know what, we usually go to the Snowmass Club, and we get that back room there, and it's been great.
Yeah, so we're still working on a location, but
Is
we'll
it on the
figure
calendar?
something out. It's August 17th.
It's a Thursday.
I may be bringing kids to college on that day.
No.
I know.
Yes, it is on the
I
calendar.
have to take my kids to college. I think mine's late.
You can bring them to dinner.
To bring them to dinner. If it's at the Black Saddle, Grace works there. So
Is that what the restaurant's called there?
yeah.
Perfect. Yep, that's good.
Okay, that's all you need to tell us?
That was it, and if you're open to that, I'll convey that to our partners at Snowmass, and I think that'll be a nice meeting, and we can tee something up for the future.
Sounds great.
Okay.
And you put us back on track here.
And you get together with Clint a lot more often than we get together with his board.
Well, yeah, and we get together socially quite a
Are we
bit.
gonna work on Lake County, meeting again? Meeting with Lake County? Lake County?
Yes, yeah, and Eagle and Basalt, we've got to get on those.
That was awesome, that meeting at Twin Lakes.
Yeah.
If we could do it before they close again. that'd be
Yeah.
good.
That
Or
guy-
we could invite them over here. They haven't been over our way, but we could meet them at, I guess that's kind of a halfway point.
Twin Lakes.
Mhm.
We can go paddle boarding. Meet
I
them. We
did
can have
get
a
a
picnic
paddle
on the
board.
beach.
You've gotta see Twin
We
Lakes.
can do a
It
picnic
is
on the
awesome.
beach.
There's no beach anymore.
Huh?
It's all water. It's
Oh.
awesome.
Oh,
It's
that's
full?
nice.
Every nook
Yeah.
and cranny of Twin Lakes
That's
has
nice.
water.
That's
Every
It's
really
full?
nice.
No kidding.
Every little finger of where they're used to, it's full.
That's
It's
good.
so
Oh my
cool.
God, the last time I went over, it certainly was not.
It's so cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we do. We ought to go see that.
Great.
With a big old bull moose standing in one of the muddy swamps. It was
Oh,
very
awesome.
cool.
I might have to go over just to see that.
Well, and I'll keep, if you're ready for future agendas, I'll make that really easy because I am frankly still on reentry and I don't have notes at this point, so
No
I don't have
worries, we're-
anything from staff.
I looked through the future agendas. I thought I had one.
There are some light days coming up.
Yeah.
I have one real quick.
Go ahead.
The work session for August the 22nd, under the prep for the EOTC meeting. The work session is August 22nd, but
Right.
it says the EOTC meeting is August 3rd, so we're
mine.
going to be a little late.
I think they
It's
meant
better late than never.
September 23rd or October 23rd.
I think
Yeah.
it's,
We'll
I think
take
it's
a look.
August, I think it's August 31st is the EOTC meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, it is? It's that soon?
Yeah.
Okay,
We'll
so,
take a look-see
So
at that.
one-
so are we
missing.
gonna see Edward's film at that?
We haven't had that conversation with the EOTC
At
staff
EOTC?
yet. Yeah.
Okay, and, okay, I'll talk with you during our break about that. Other part.
We
of
have to
the
see
conversation.
what's on the agenda as far as time. And we're hosting it here. It's our meeting. You're hosting it, Francis. It's your
I
meeting.
thought we did the last one.
Snowmass did the
Was it
last one.
Snowmass the last time?
Okay, and then, I guess the ones that I've never heard of that came up under land use, we'll hear about, right?
Yeah.
Get a packet. Seemed like there were two new ones that I hadn't heard anything about. And guess that's it. Any other questions? Greg, do you have anything on future
No,
agendas?
I'm good. We're all good for now.
We just have Edward's film. That's where Greg and I are at.
Is Steve still with us?
I'm gonna be gone August 25th to take a child to college.
Oh, that's so
But
exciting.
we don't have a meeting that week between the 25th and the end of the month. We don't have any meetings, as far as I can tell. Is that right?
EOTC.
Except for EOTC. Oh.
We don't have meetings, so there are 5 Tuesdays or something?
I'm gonna be gone on the 31st. Dang, I'm gonna miss the
Second.
EOTC meeting.
And the film, if we show it.
What do you mean we don't have meetings?
Well, it's the fifth week. It's the
It
fifth,
is,
fifth Tuesday and
really?
Wednesday, so we shouldn't have, right?
Huh.
Am I right?
There's
Better
one.
correct me, because if you
Yes, because
you want me to
today
show
is
up-
the 1st, yeah.
Yeah.
2,
And
So-
yesterday was the 31st.
That's
yeah, so
right.
there's nothing on the 29th. It's on the calendar, but it shouldn't be.
Are we gonna
Okay.
keep rolling? Oh, we don't have,
Do you guys want to take a break?
I'd rather. Do we need to, or can we
I don't need
just
to.
plow through and go home?
I don't need to take a break. Rosa?
We don't,
You doing okay back there, Andorra?
we could do
Ready.
open discussion.
Well, let's plow on then.
yeah, we don't
This is
have,
the fee changes.
we don't have Brian on yet. I think we're now ahead.
We're way ahead. We're half an
right.
hour ahead.
Yeah,
We could
so
do open discussion.
we have some other items that we can cover for sure.
Okay, let's do open
Um,
discussion.
Let's see. So, first, I think y'all have started seeing some memberships. We were accepted into CAST,
Yeah, I saw
Colorado
that.
Association of Ski Towns.
And since then, we've gotten
membership.
so many texts from them. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's
We're
been
inundated.
a long time coming. Now, one of the things that we'll want to do, just like we do with other committees like CCI and such, because CAST does take positions, and as voting members, is amend our membership resolution so that the board is designating somebody to be a voting member. Now, we won't have that necessarily before their next meeting, which is coming up. There's one in Vale and one in
Yeah,
Basalt.
I just sent
which
you
I'm
something. I
missing
want to
here.
go to the one in Vale because it's attached to the MT 2030 that we went to last year, the
Oh.
climate solutions.
And so I just wanted to
I won't say anything.
see if the board had any thoughts. I mean, maybe, Francie, that you want to be the CAST rep. I think we should just have a quick conversation so we
I can do it,
understand
if,
that.
maybe Francis, because I could do it, because it's a lot in alignment with Northwest Cog. They're both working together very closely, but we can talk about that. I won't, when is the meeting in Vale?
That's what I'm just trying to look
It's
at here.
August, or it's October, I just sent
October?
it on, October.
And there's one coming up in Basalt here pretty quickly that I am not finding right away. But
I was the CAS representative when we were part of CAS before.
Oh, you were the CAS representative.
It might make
before.
more sense for somebody from Aspen to be our representative, because that's where the ski area is. So
And it doesn't mean you can't attend, but
Yeah.
maybe
We can come.
right now we think about bringing forward an amendment to the resolution and looking for. I know we're missing Steve and Kelly from this discussion, but it
Did
sounds
Steve
like
leave our
Steve,
meeting?
Steve's
is
Steve's
Steve
still on,
here?
he's just not on, we just don't have his.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Steve. I couldn't see you on the screen here. But it sounds like maybe doing, suggesting Patty and Francie, maybe you'd want to be alternate.
That's
I'm
fine.
I'm
If that's
kind of
okay with you,
interested. I'd
Steve.
like to go to the thing in October in Vail and then maybe decide then.
Yeah.
Why
I
don't we
want to
go-
go
why
to
don't
that
we go
too,
check it
because I
out?
want to try the
Are
MT
you gonna go to
Summit
the
again.
climate thing again?
I'm going to try it again. There was some good stuff at it.
So we have 3 of you interested in going in October, which is
Yeah.
fine. You can all.
I would sign up for the climate thing as well this year.
It was interesting last year in
It
Breckenridge.
is, I just looked at it.
It was very interesting.
It's the 19th to the 20th, and that is,
Would you forward on
Of
the
October.
meeting, that climate thing to me? Because
Do you want me to send you the cast note that has all that on it?
you should have that email.
I
from
know, but I
Cast.
don't know if I still have it.
It just came in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The 19th and 20th, those are Thursday and Fridays. So that is core, Greg. It's a core meeting day.
Right. We could do that online.
Yeah.
Well, we've got some time.
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
like to do this.
All right, other business?
Yep. Other thing that we had in front of you is a letter, a thank you letter from the board to the assessor and BOE staff. I think this was requested by the board
It was requested
Yeah.
by Patty, which was
Patty,
very
which was very
thoughtful.
thoughtful, yes.
by Patty.
And we're gonna individually sign Fancy. Charlotte's gonna print them out, and we are gonna put all of our names on there for signatures.
Yeah, it's really nice.
So I will sign before I leave, and then Kelly, we can sign them all when Kelly gets back next week.
Okay. She'll be back by the 9th, I know.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this was a board discussion or not, but I had a note about a question about doing a proclamation on the August 27th.
That came from Human Resources apparently, and I wanted it, the board signs proclamations, the board presents proclamations. I think proclamations need to come from the BOCC. I think the thank you note is perfect. I don't know if we
What
want
was the proclamation gonna be?
I don't know.
It would
I didn't
probably
see
be, it's just a public, I mean, as Patty said, proclamations are always approved by the board. They're a statement from the board. It's, though formally adopted, at a regular meeting and usually put into a specific form, similar
for
to a
whom was it?
resolution. Also for the assessors and BOE, so it'd be duplicative of the letter effort. I think it came out of conversations about, how to recognize then.
That's something we can always consider as this property tax thing unravels a little more. We can always do it later on, but I think a thank you now will keep people morale going, and they deserve a little big pat on the back, and we've still got a lot of work to do.
Still got a lot of work to do, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
I just remembered the pile of the thank you
Charlotte's
Oh,
working
yeah,
on
I
it.
should take yours.
back there.
I kept track of who got them already.
These don't have names on them. They're not personalized.
No,
Right.
but I
Kinda
gave
makes them
Charlotte a
less.
list of the names of the people who already received theirs.
Got
So
it.
she knows who
All
has and
right,
who
I'll
hasn't.
take Forrest and Lydia.
You let Charlotte know that?
Yep.
And then she's going to contact the people who haven't received them and ask them to come by and pick them up.
Got it.
Okay,
I kept track.
thanks
Great.
for reminding me, Greg.
Thank you. I know, I just saw them back there and thought, oh, wait a minute, we need to,
Yeah.
and there's another one, an older one underneath from long, long ago, just while we're on the topic. Let me just check. Who is this for? Month of the Young Child.
Oh,
boy.
yeah, we didn't have any young
What
children
month
here.
was that?
June?
Charlotte will get it when she gets the other ones, I'm sure.
May, it was May, okay, I don't know who it's for though. All right.
And I think we still have Francie's budget book sitting back there too.
And
And her airport book.
Room on my
And,
desk at home.
and we got name tags down here on the floor, and I'm not jumping over the table.
Oh, Greg is really good at
Mine
that.
Do that when the camera's off.
Not doing that.
John, how did this happen?
And then we have a letter in here to
To
Eagle
Jeannie.
County.
Right.
I think this was an idea from the board also
Yeah.
when response was in front of us. Just wanted to get your okay on this.
This is the building in Basalt,
Yeah, asking them to help.
asking Jeannie, them to help over there in Eagle.
Yeah, asking them to contribute some to the,
How much are we asking them to contribute?
I think we left that open.
A lot. But maybe we should make a specific number.
You may want to, I would suggest inviting them to do their own
Let them do
deliberations
it?
on
Okay,
it.
that makes sense.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one open discussion that's
This
so
is just a
important.
copy. I don't have to actually do anything with this piece of
No,
paper.
it's already signed by you.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Already signed by you. How's that work?
These
I
are
have,
pieces of
I
paper.
have
We're
something,
very
and,
helpful
and I
that way.
just,
We're very helpful.
I just want the board to know, and I'm not sure about it. It's the noontime fire alarm.
The what fire alarm?
You know, it's historic, the fire alarm on top of the fire station. It goes off at noon, every day at
And you
noontime.
didn't do it today?
My neighbor said she hasn't heard it for a while, and I'm not sure. So I'm gonna look into it
I haven't heard
because
it for a while.
Do,
either.
do you want me just to do a quick ask?
that would be
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when they built the new fire station, they were not gonna put it back up, and the community was pretty insistent. Jim Markolinis did not
It's a
want it.
historic thing.
But yeah, it's historic, and just if noontime, it doesn't have
It's a
to go off.
historic nuisance. We can't just let
love
go
it.
of it.
Because I have to tell you, when
I
we
haven't heard it for a while either. Now that
I
you
know,
mention
I
it.
haven't
when
either.
we first moved into Smuggler, 3 o'clock in the morning it went off. My son was little, and he woke up noontime.
Time.
That's fine.
And I had to make him a sandwich to get him to go back to bed. And you know, so it's very family for the
Have lobby
flappers.
and response, right? We all salivate.
Noontime, yeah.
We only get hungry when we hear the
In the
alarm.
noontime, yeah.
That's funny.
That's-
I have
think
a
they need
couple of
that.
questions in response to letters that we've gotten. One is the fire suppression at the or the Red Basalt Distillery. I can't remember the name of that place. We've had a couple of letters encouraging us to insist that they use fire suppression in the buildings, or I haven't-
Leslie's working
I have
on
to
it.
admit, I
that-
haven't read
that's in-
every single word of the letters, but
It's
Right.
in community development. I don't know the status of that off
Okay.
the top of my head.
That's one of the reasons we delayed their annual review, because they're working on some of those issues. And there's been a lot of communication from the Carbondale,
yeah.
from the Roaring Fork Fire.
okay. So
And I think
that's
there's
happening.
a neighborhood, kind of a neighborhood,
And the other one is from
issue.
Redstone. I mean, we had the hate letters about the parking at the 4th of July parade, but the other one is they want speed bumps. I think it's at the south end of town. And I just have to say that I put in a request for speed bumps on Prince Creek, and Brian cut back the oak trees, but I didn't hear anything more about speed bumps. And that corner continues to be incredibly dangerous, and I will write to Brian again, but it's really a concern there, the number of bikes that are riding up from town, the number of cars carrying bikes flying around that corner. The people who use the parking lot and carry their bikes up there to the parking lot don't seem to understand that that's a road that people live on. They think it's a bike trail or something. It's a really dangerous corner, and I'm really concerned that somebody's going to get hurt. All of us who live there are just waiting for it. Dogs, our dogs, Richard's dogs, and the people on bikes, and it's unbelievable how scary that corner is. Rio got driven off the road the other day. He had to go fully into the parking lot at the Flying Dog, just driven completely off the road. Everybody I know has been driven off the road on that corner.
Guys coming down and taking the,
It's really scary. Those people
Huh,
who
wow.
haul their bikes up there are oblivious to the fact that there are other cars on the road and that people live there. Not all of them, of course, but
but Redstone, didn't hear about speed bumps. We had years ago a huge discussion with Redstone about
speed bumps.
traffic on, yeah, and Brian will remember. So if I haven't seen anything,
maybe we
but
should have
Brian,
Brian talk to us, because speed bumps in the winter are a problem, or can be.
They can create some other safety hazards, but I'll tap in and to Brian. So, and I haven't seen the Redstone letter yet. Doesn't mean I probably have it. I just
Yeah,
haven't
I haven't seen it either, but yeah.
Might have
While
come
we're
through.
talking about speed on highways, Brush Creek Road has become more congested and people are driving faster like they do on 82. And it's actually kind of daunting to try to pull onto Brush Creek Road from,
A left turn.
yeah, to pull out there. And a neighbor's dog got hit the other day. The puppy got scared by something or it just ran off and they couldn't get to it before it got run down.
Oh.
Yeah, it was really tragic.
And you're near the bottom, so you'd
I'm
think people wouldn't
actually
be going that fast.
I'm half a mile up or more up.
No, but that's what I meant, the
Oh,
bottom
being
of
at the
Brush
bottom, yeah,
Creek.
that's where they're going.
So how
they're
fast
going,
can they be going?
They're going fast.
People coming down, maybe.
People coming down
Yeah.
and up too. They're all, you can hear everybody accelerating as they're racing to Snowmass.
You
or
need to
racing from
talk to the
Snowmass.
SO and see if they can,
It would be great to slow the speed down 5 miles an hour and see if that helps, or, you know, it seems like
Is it a
that road
county
is,
road?
that
Brush
road,
Creek is a county
it's the
road?
busiest county road.
yeah, one of the problems is though, if they can't get them to go the speed limit now, slowing it down, you need to have some
Enforcement.
enforcement, just the presence of enforcement.
Camera, speed camera. I'll go put my
Yeah,
own
there were
cameras
no,
up.
when I came in this morning, just barely morning, 11, there weren't any sheriffs out on 82, and there was a silver Porsche. I tried to get the number, but I couldn't because he turned at.
Going too fast.
Where did he turn?
It wasn't a red.
Woody Creek Road, maybe? It was a silver Porsche. It was a modern edition of a Porsche. He was going 90, I'm sure.
Wow, yeah.
Because I was going faster than I should. I was like almost at 70, and he
Went by you,
flew
right?
by me.
I know, I've been up and down so many
Flew by
times.
me.
It's
He
scary.
changed lanes first to go around me, and then just flew. And
The,
so watch
this-
out for that silver
This
Porsche.
morning, when I came into town to register my car, I decided to take McLean Flats, and the sheriff was actually stopping traffic to allow, because the congestion on 82 was so bad, they were diverting
Backing up.
everybody to go on McLean Flats for
No,
a while. And they'd
really?
stop the traffic down Valley, 2 sheriffs or 3 directing traffic. So
I've
it
never
was
seen that.
intensely
What
busy
is going
today.
on
You
this
mean making it
weekend?
so that people could turn left down to get onto McLean's Flats?
Yeah, basically
That's
stopping
where
it
I
so
was
people
talking
could
about
get
having
down.
a
Right.
light that one,
Right.
one time. That's the
It
dangerous
keeps coming
spot.
up. It
We've talked
comes
about
back
that 100 times.
When the cars are backed up there, they actually protrude into the
lane.
moving
So
lane. It's
they
very
need a
scary.
longer turnoff lane, don't
And
they?
then there's people who try to turn at the turn before that, thinking it's McLean's Flats, and that's also terrifying.
Right, yeah.
As they turned in somebody's driveway.
No, it's like, what's the name of that road?
Twining Flats, the one that goes down to
I
Twining
guess it's
Flats.
that
Jerboz,
one.
the one at Jerboz or at?
The one just before, the one
Oh,
that you
yeah,
take to go
right,
up
that's Twining
McLean's.
Flats, and they
That's
find they're
Twining
not in the
Flats.
right
So people
place.
start turning there and they're like, oh no, this isn't it, and they pull out again, and
Yeah.
it's scary for sure. Can't wait to get back on the bus when
What
I'm
was it?
whole.
Steve wants to weigh in.
Yeah, Steve?
Oh, thank you. I'm enjoying this talk about people speeding and whatnot. Driving back from Walden the other day, I felt like I was back in the 1950s on the little 2-lane roads. I drove all the way back from Walden clear to my house without going on Highway 82 or I-70, and that was so fun, just going on the little slow state highways and the county roads and different things to get home.
How'd
It was
you- how'd you do
a
that?
fun and easy trip.
That's
Took a
awesome.
little longer because I wasn't trying to set a speed record, but
Right.
it was sure relaxing.
How did you
So
not get
I-
on Highway 82 though, to get to your house?
Well, I had to cross Highway 82 right at Elgeville, the Elgeville light. But I came over Cottonwood Pass and I came out at Elgeville and just crossed the highway and then followed the back.
Oh,
Took
wow.
East Cypress.
Excellent. What fun.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
the
on
way to
East
see
Cypress.
Colorado.
I'm on East Cypress a lot now. I'm going over the top almost every day. And it's not taking
So-
me any
so-
longer.
I do have one other open discussion item.
Okay?
The issue on Lower Snowmass Creek Road with the business operating out of a house there that
Oh, yeah.
was causing noise and disturbance to the neighborhood. Chad Abraham from the community development, he's the zoning enforcement officer, code enforcement, is on to that. He's been there. I think he's talked to them. I think that has been handled. So hopefully that's the end of what we'll hear about it, but just wanted to update you on that.
Thank you.
Is he out of code?
Well, that's what they said, that he was
I saw the letter,
operating.
yeah.
I mean, a lot of people operate little home businesses that don't disturb anybody, but this was more a pretty major commercial kind of operation with 20 or more cars involved in trucks and panel trucks and all sorts of, it was a more major commercial enterprise that was against the zoning.
I had another one.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
I have to remember what it was. One, it was so dry last week, and I was getting so nervous because the beautiful tall green grass that was waist high around our property just turned into brittle, crispy stuff. And so we cut a ton of it out, mowed it all down, and now it looks like practically a desert. So I'm really grateful to see these rains come in. And I'm grateful for the fire district, which with the county came into Brush Creek and did some chipping. And Ellie Hager said they might be able to do it again. If people put out brush piles, the neighborhoods can do that. If you collect the brush and put it out and properly facing the right direction, organized just so, they'll come and they'll chip it and haul it away, which is such a great service that time of year. So with the fire mitigation. And then the other thing I wanted to say was that I took a flight yesterday morning with Tyson Weiss and
Oh, you did
Daniel
go.
Baker. I went out and flew with them because they wanted to show me the pattern that they were talking about in the safety meeting, which is the proposal to the FAA about what is this flight pattern, which would make for a smoother approach into Aspen. And I've flown the previous approach with private pilots where you're not any lower. You're not lower over Woody Creek ever. It's a much higher thing. It's up over Triangle Mountain, Triangle Peak, 1,000 or 2,000 feet above Triangle Peak is where this descent starts. And this new technology they're talking about that could be implemented fairly easy, the new approach follows the same path straight into the airport on a direct glide angle.
But 1,000 rather than 2,000?
They actually are starting lower over Triangle, and they don't have to step down so much, because previously, if you were in a small plane or a private plane coming in, you'd be doing stair steps. And I've flown in with Wally Obermeyer years ago, and I remember them calling out the numbers, and it's a complicated, difficult approach to come in the way it had been mandated. What they've proposed is something that's simpler, certainly simpler, safer, and easier for everybody. And I think there was a misunderstanding that it was actually coming up low up the valley, and that's not what it is. They said it's a lower angle approach, but that's not what they meant. They're trying to reduce the angle from farther out, like tucking 5 or 8, 10 miles out.
I thought it was pretty clear what I read. Maybe it was.
It was nice of Barry to
There was
set
some
that up.
misunderstanding. So anyway, I went up and flew with them and checked it out, and I understood, and I recommend doing that because one, you get a real perspective on the valley, and two, you get to see what's really happening out there in terms of traffic and operations. So I thought it was useful.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Well, should
We
we
have
move on?
Brian and Kurt here.
Perfect.
Okay, so this is, something environmental health department fees for 2023. Yep. It is recommendation of fee changes for the environmental health department. Thank you, Brian, for being here.
And also with me is my supervisor, Kurt Dahl.
It looks on.
And this is only related to septic, right?
Correct.
I didn't understand it at all, so I'm looking forward to your explanation.
So, good afternoon, Kurt Dahl. I'm the Environmental Health Manager. I'm going to start out real quick with a reminder for process, which I think is part of what you're probably referring to, and then Brian will do the presentation on why we want to change the fees. So,
Okay.
In the past, we have come with fee changes to the BOCC when the BOCC acted as the Board of Health. Since the formation of the Board of Health as a separate authority, the state statute actually says that, indicates that the Board of Health is the one who has the authority to set environmental health fees to cover our costs for delivering environmental health services. It's state statute 25.1.508 subsection. I can tell you the exact subsection if you need, but and so it creates a little bit of confusion because the board obviously has budgetary responsibilities, fiscal responsibilities, and this impacts the budget for environmental health. So what we've done in the past is where we have a fee change, we've come to the BOCC looking for a recommendation to the Board of Health to approve any fee changes that we would have. So that's why we're actually here asking for a recommendation and not an approval of the actual fees themselves. And then we have a Board of Health meeting for August 15th, I believe is the date, that will actually then, presuming that you make a recommendation to approve that, we'll then do a presentation to the Board of Health to formalize the fees. And the fees themselves, we only have a couple of pieces to make changes to that are, as Patty indicated, related to the septic piece. But I just wanted to start out with that process a little bit just so that you're aware.
So
of
we're
why.
going to recommend to you to go to the Board of Health to pass this fee change.
Or recommend to the Board of Health that they approve the proposed fee changes.
Okay.
It's
And the reason for this is state statute really did not, I think, anticipate. You all have the fiduciary responsibility for the health fund, and they were delegated the responsibility for setting the fees. And so it's just not great law. So this is our little way to make sure everyone who's affected is in the loop.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hit it, Brian.
All right. So we did do a major fee change in 2020. So most of this stuff is still exactly the same as what we did in 2020. And this is just a few very minor changes to the existing fee structure. The first part of this was that we felt that we needed an additional fee for a re-review of a septic system that would be an application that was deficient, mostly because we were seeing a lot of poorly made applications or incomplete applications that were wasting staff's time, doing reviews for stuff that could not be approved because the application was not complete. And we thought that adding this additional re-review fee would add an incentive to the applicants to be sending us complete approvable applications. That fee is $200. It's a little bit more than the hourly rate that we currently charge. And we thought that was about what we thought that would be fair to
Who
charge.
submits the application? Professional people who are putting in the system or the homeowner?
Generally, it is the engineers or contractors that are working, designing and building the homes.
So they should
not usually a,
So they should be turning in better applications. I get it.
yeah.
Does this come with full warning, so they're warned they're gonna be paying if they don't get
Oh
it
yeah,
right
we'll
the first
certainly
time?
have that on our website
But that's
and
the
on
disincentive.
applications and everywhere. Yeah, once we obviously have this approved, we would have notifications out.
There are some extreme cases where what we would be getting for a submittal, essentially we would almost be designing the system with the comments that we would be providing back. And this has occurred enough times, and it's not just Pickens County that's dealing with this. This is an issue with the state. Unfortunately, PEs are licensed at the state level, and there's not a way for us to address that licensing component. So this was a piece that we've seen a few other departments do and think it makes a lot of sense. So
In the warnings and the criteria, is it pretty clear so people could do it right? Or is it one of these things where they're just gonna get it wrong because it's complicated or confusing? But these are engineers.
It is challenging currently to design a septic system under the new regulations because an engineer should be able to do it. But
Right.
it is more difficult than it was in the past. But that's not really the issue that we're seeing. We're just seeing incomplete applications where they just don't have a full design and they're just giving it to us. I don't want to say
As long as they
exactly
know
why,
it-
but
it'll
On
cost
a cocktail napkin.
Because they have a deadline, they've got to meet for their client. So just as long as they know it's going to cost them to do that.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of picturing mine now when we did mine, which was a long time ago, 22 years ago. But I do remember we had an engineer who did it, and then And then Bill Doré did it, and it was like,
And for our county, 95% of systems are designed by an engineer?
About, yeah.
Something like,
Yeah,
a lot
now
more than
that
others. Yeah.
in 2018, the new regulations required if the soil was greater than 35% rock, that it had to be designed by an engineer, and there's a whole bunch of criteria requiring how that needs to be done. Almost every site that we have left in Pickens County has more than 35% rock. So a very significant amount of the systems are designed by an engineer.
you know that when we did our property, there was not a single rock on the entire property. It's 5.5
Really?
acres. We went down 8 feet.
And
In a
found
couple of
rocks.
places, it's all silt. The
Oh.
entire field is all silt, no rocks.
That's
The
amazing.
only rocks we have on the property came in with construction. It was amazing.
That's
They're,
remarkable.
they're in her garden, they're her garden
Bottomland,
rocks.
you're in bottomland there, I'd say.
Well, we're in the alluvial runoff from Sopris,
Okay.
and it's
wow.
all silt.
Wow.
In fact, when it rains really hard, I can just see the whole house sliding down the hill. We have incredibly huge subgrade construction to make sure that doesn't happen. But yeah, also,
Septic's fine, don't come over there. She doesn't live where you think she is.
She didn't warn me the other day, and it was- it was sunny outside.
wasn't raining.
It wasn't raining.
Greg, to your point, the other thing I wanted to mention, in terms of difficulty, there's a state regulation that all the counties in the state base their regulation off of. So we don't have a regulation that is very different. There are a few things, mostly in conjunction with ComDev, like setbacks
Right.
that we have with the waterways. We're consistent with that, but other than that, we're really consistent with Eagle and Garfield County. So it's not like we have these really different
Right.
regulations that are difficult for
Right.
people either.
So they should know
They
better
should know.
statewide or the state needs to do a better job of establishing the criteria so people just don't file incomplete applications.
But our water lines are required to be deeper than Garfield, right? Ours have to be like 6 feet and they're 3, or, isn't that right?
I don't know what
I
the
don't know.
water
That's a
line
building
depth, that's a
elevation
building
based.
department.
Yeah, I
Frost,
think- yeah, I
you know,
don't think-
frost
It-
flare.
We get into water lines if they come close to the septic system in terms of making sure that either they're outside a setback or you encase them if they're.
So it
within.
doesn't affect how deep the sewer has to be.
No.
I see.
Well,
Okay, just a little side topic.
So that was the one portion of the re-review, additional reviews, $200. And then the other minor change that we saw, we've always worked in conjunction with Eagle County for licensing. And we've shared license testing and for when people need to have licenses in Eagle County and then also in Pickens County. And as part of our review, we saw that Eagle County had increased their licensing fees to $50. They previously were $35, the same as us. So we figured we should just be right at the same page and
Okay.
keep them at the same level as we're sharing with
Yeah,
our
we don't want to force
communities.
Steve, did
people
you
to
have a
put their
question?
septic system in Eagle County.
Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Francie.
Septic confessions.
My question, these fee increases seem very reasonable to me. My question has to do with state legislation. It sounds like this might be that kind of a topic that we should try to change the state legislation in terms of the fiscal responsibility of the commissioners to approve the fees versus the Board of Health being the one to approve the fees. It's a gray area, sort of like gray water area, but do you think that we should propose some changes to the state legislation about the Board of Health County Commissioner responsibilities in this? Also, I had discussion with the Saguache County Commissioner, and they're having some real issues down there with feeling like the state laws regarding the septic systems are really onerous for them, with lots of landowners who are poor or close to poor and really can't afford a full septic system. They would like to do composting toilets or, different solutions than a full all-out wastewater treatment system like we do here. And that would be, I think, another discussion about another piece of legislation, but What do you think about those two ideas?
So the state is just starting their re-review of the septic regulations. They do that about every 4 years. It is a real challenge because we're balancing public health to people being able to live in certain places. If we are going to allow people to build substandard systems, it is a risk to your neighbors having sewage possibly in our groundwater and in our rivers. So it is a challenge.
And to the second point you were talking about, Steve, I do think there are some opportunities. The first thing I thought of is the way the septic code reads. If you put in, say, a composting toilet or a gray water system, there are no allowances for that. Your septic system still has to be full size. And that's
That makes great sense.
What was explained to me was because at some point you could remove those other systems and now you have an undersized septic system, which to me, at least where places where there are active building code and building departments, I just don't see that you're likely to see that. Maybe somewhere if you didn't have that, you're not just gonna randomly go remove that. I personally didn't agree with that, but I think there's an opportunity to have that discussion so that maybe if people do have those alternatives, they are able to look at, especially if you're on a very small lot. Previous to all of this, where I came from in Teller County, we had quarter-acre lots where people were doing that, and at the time, we were allowed to do that, and that was the only way they could put a house on there and live full-time and have a gray water system or a composting toilet and then a smaller septic system.
Or if you're really isolated.
Yeah.
So you don't have neighbors that you're gonna, well, you might have a runoff though.
And I think in Saguache County, a lot of them have 40-acre parcels where a big ranch was chopped up into 40-acre parcels. Same way in Park County, lots of, these rural lots where people have a lot of land and they can see their neighbors across the sagebrush field, but they're really spread out from each other. I think that's a situation in these other counties.
Right. The other piece there, though, is that at least in other counties, we don't necessarily have building envelopes. And so people are building not necessarily without thinking about some of the infrastructure pieces. That was one of the big challenges I had coming from Teller County is there are places where people wanted to build and their septic system could only go on solid rock. Not really a great place to be putting it, and there wasn't any forethought being put into that. And I know I really appreciate the fact that we do that here and think about where somebody can put a structure because in other places we can't, and that could be another challenge is they're trying to build somewhere where our code doesn't necessarily say you can't do it, different than maybe some other states, and yet the challenge is to blast something in, literally, are prohibitive, so. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to suggest that we recommend this go to the Board of Health. Go ahead.
Yeah, Steve, and listening to Steve, I think we should follow what they're doing in their re-review at the state level. And if those other counties have issues and they would like us to support them, I don't think that some of those are our issues, but doesn't mean we might not want to support another county in helping them out. But we have a lot of fish to fry here this next year or so. So I think we should follow it, and if something comes up where we feel it has a direct impact to us, or if we're asked for support from another county, then we'll follow up on it. Does that make sense?
What does fried fish have to do with the septic system? You lost me.
Because you have to be careful of throwing your old fish into a septic system.
There's probably some tale about
Because if they get in the water, you're really in trouble, those old fish. Fried fish, old fried fish.
Thank you. So, in other words, we're making a recommendation to come back to the Board of Health.
For this fee increase,
And then I get to chair the same conversation there.
if you'd like.
You don't sound excited.
Everybody okay
I'll be
with the
fully
recommendation?
informed.
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
good.
Steve, you're okay with the recommendation? Greg?
Yes.
Yes, I'm
All
okay
right,
with it.
thank you, Kurt and Brian.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Super fun. We have a property I want to.
Are we really done?
Same one.
308.
2-1.
Wow,
Make something up.
you're
Let's
fast.
not.
214. It's an
I
empty
realized
lot.
that I need to.
They're
I can
tracking
register
mud
my
in
new
and
car
out.
with the parking department. I think they've caught me.
Yeah. It's happened before.
Run out and see if I can.
Is that the vacant one?
It's really great to have you back,
It's for
John.
sale, right?
It's one for sale,
welcome
and everybody's
back.
Like,
parking on it, and
rough
they're
going.
muddy, and
We have
people
a,
are, with
little
all these rays,
safety
people are just
net
driving the
underneath
dirt
us
off
now,
into the
again.
street.
Okay, that's what you're calling about.
I'm sure you are.
I'm taking care
Is
of
your
the
Bob
weeds
still
on
here?
it. I'm calling the property manager. It's got thistle that are taller than me. I'm
Oh my
taking
God,
care
you
of
went
that if
down
you
and
can.
back again?
Okay, we'll
I'll do one, give you the other.
the city about,
You know, when I go over the pass, I have made it as fast as 3 hours and 15 minutes, but that was not obeying many speed limits. Speaking of speeding, I usually take about 3.5,
What?
4 hours coming over the pass.
Yes, we're done, Andorra.
Wilkerson.